I've worked in fundraising for a little over 20 years. So at DTV for quite a while, working on a lot of different clients on DRTV programs, digital programs. Currently in a sort of strategic planning role, so kind of working to kind of help grow our charities' kind of donor bases. Before DTV, I worked at Amnesty for a few years and at other sort of fundraising agencies. And I'll pass over to Poppy.
Cool. Thanks, Alex. Hi, everyone. I'm Poppy. I'm a creative strategist at DTV. I've worked in fundraising for about 8 years now at DTV and also Consider Creative, another agency you may have worked with. I'm a strategist, so a big part of my role is supporting organizations to deliver campaigns that meet their objectives as effectively as possible and support them in building and growing their individual giving and also their legacy programs. So that's me, and I'll share screen so Alex can talk a little bit more about who we are at DTV.
Okay.
Bear with me. Cool.
Great, yeah, so what we're going to be covering today is legacy giving unlocked, creating messages that move donors to action. So we'll be talking about how important it is with legacy fundraising to have a really clear legacy proposition and messaging. And we'll also talk about measurement of that as well. So yeah, what we're going to cover, I'm going to cover a little bit about DTV. I think some of you may have worked with us before, but some of you might not know us. So a little bit about us and particularly about our experience in legacy fundraising. Then Poppy's going to talk about how we approach legacy proposition development with lots of examples, lots of films to sort of show and bring that to life. And then there'll be time for a breakout group, time for questions and discussions. But as I think Marie said, feel free to put comments in the chat as well. We can try and get to those as we go along. So a little bit about who we are. We are a global leading direct TV video fundraising agency. So Poppy and I both work in our office in the UK in London, but we also have offices in Germany, Hong Kong, Australia, and Korea. So DTV has really sort of grown over the last sort of 21 years, I think we've been running. Starting off in the UK, but basically opening offices globally because we found that with fundraising, what works in the UK will work in other markets, and the way that people respond to fundraising, the way that we're sort of wired is the same across countries. So we've had a lot of success kind of working in other markets as well. And where we've got to today is we're working with about 60 plus charities in 25 plus countries. So we run DRTV campaigns, we run digital campaigns, but we do pretty much everything in-house at DTV. So we've got full kind of creative team that will do kind of end-to-end production, but we also have a planning team that would work on proposition development, integrated campaign planning, research and insight, and program sort of analytics and optimization. As well as DTV, we have other companies within our group. So DTV Optimize, again, you might have heard of a call center based in Bedford, fundraising specialist. We also have a media agency that based in Australia, and Muddy Tripods is a kind of collective of videographers who can go out into the field and shoot footage. But really what we do is all about return on investment and lifetime value. So we're really kind of fundraisers basically. So although we are a creative agency, what we're driven by is fundraising, and it's really about like creating an advert that will bring you in donors and bring in sustainable programs, so donors that kind of keep with you. Move on to the next one. Some of the clients that the charities that we work with, and move on again, please, Poppy. Just about in terms of why DTV exists. So DTV was set up, I think, like 21 years ago, and the founders kind of came from a commercial background. Very much, they knew how to make direct response TV work, but they saw that there was a bit of a gap in the market where a lot of the charity DRTV was kind of quite expensively priced, and a lot of the techniques from the commercial world weren't being used. So they set up to kind of really make DRTV that would kind of maximize ROI, that use all of the kind of successful techniques from the commercial sector. We've kind of evolved over the years to be more about just sort of film in fundraising, so not just TV, but film on basically any screen, whether that could be social media, but also kind of retention films, but also kind of understanding audiences, understanding brain chemistry when people are responding to an ad, what are the sort of triggers that will get people to respond and respond and kind of keep giving to charities. And it's always been about kind of small budgets, using existing footage and making films that last so that charities can kind of maximize their budgets. And as well as the kind of creative side, we also have experts who work on kind of media optimization, teams of kind of analysts who kind of understand, media plans, understand how you can make your budget work as hard as possible. Call center optimization and digital response optimization and planning and strategy. And everything we do is really about building donor numbers. And we do that, we work across a range of different products and propositions, because we understand that there's a lot of audience out there to support charities, but they won't all want to support you in one particular way. They won't all want to give you a regular gift. So there's a lot of different products that we work across that can appeal to different audiences to engage with charities in different ways. But obviously what we're talking about today is legacy, so we're going to focus on that from now on. And yeah, we've got a lot of experience of legacy within DTV. We've worked across pretty much all different charity sectors, so medical charities, development charities, humanitarian, etc. So a lot of experience. We've done a lot of legacy fundraising, legacy propositions, legacy DRTV ads, legacy digital campaigns across the sector. And throughout that sort of period, the principles that we work with are that legacy marketing is obviously quite different from other forms of fundraising. People don't plan on dying soon, so our focus is much longer term, much more future vision, rather than meeting an urgent current need. So a lot of what we do is in individual giving fundraising is more focused on regular giving and cash, and to get someone to give a donation today is different sort of motivation than the more future focused kind of vision-led approach that you have with legacy, which is much more about your values as a viewer. It's about what's important to you in your life. And so it's more linked with brand than a lot of the other kind of direct response that we do. And we also have to appreciate the fact that the viewers that see a piece of legacy fundraising will be at very different stages in their consideration journey. Many might be in sort of pre-consideration stage, they haven't even thought about it. Others, maybe they're thinking about updating their will, but what we're doing is sparking a conversation. We're encouraging action to kind of begin that relationship. And our kind of guiding principle in all we do with legacy fundraising is that it's an extraordinary thing for someone to include a charity in their will. It's, in many cases, it will be the biggest gift that they will give to an organization. So it really requires a lot of belief in that charity, a lot of inspiration, a lot of trust. They need to trust that you're going to spend their money wisely after they're gone. So it's a really extraordinary thing, and we need to kind of remember that in everything that we do with our legacy fundraising.
Brilliant. Thank you, Alex. So the rest of the session, we want to talk a little bit more about developing legacy propositions and the key considerations when it comes to developing a legacy proposition that's really going to be as effective as possible and work for you. Understanding your objectives is absolutely key to effective legacy propositions and campaigns. It might sound obvious, of course, but sometimes we do find that purpose and objectives get missed in the excitement of a new proposition, a new campaign, a new creative appeal, but really these should be front and center of every proposition that you develop. When thinking about developing a new legacy proposition, really we should be asking ourselves, what are you looking for? Is this about delivering lead volume? Is it about delivering cost per lead at a good level? Or is it about bringing in high quality, highly engaged leads that are likely to convert and pledge a gift? Is it important that the leads are measurable? Do we need to be able to track a specific cost per lead, or is broader engagement still valuable here? How are we able to engage and measure that? What cost per lead targets are realistic? And what's your time frame in terms of return on investment? And therefore, who is your potential audience? It can be tempting to focus on the importance of the vision, the mission, and the values. That's super valuable when we're thinking about developing a legacy proposition, but this stuff is just as important as the building blocks when we start to have those conversations. Your legacy proposition should be dependent on performance metrics. The offer you make audiences in the context of legacy can vary depending on if you want those high volume but less qualified leads, or lower volume but more highly qualified leads. It could be a broad engagement campaign where you ask people to find out more and you offer more information, or it could be an incentivized campaign, whether it's a value exchange or a free will writing offer, where you're offering them something in return to incentivize them to respond and engage with you and start that journey. Legacy messaging is very much a spectrum. On one end of the spectrum, you have much more brand engagement style campaigns where you're offering effectively symbolic immortality, you're offering shared values, you're offering understanding of their identity. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have campaigns that are much more driven by the consumer offer or benefit. You're offering an incentive to drive response and encourage people to start that conversation with you and kind of begin that journey towards considering pledging a gift. We find that some of the most engaged leads can come from those intangible offerings that are much more about shared values and connection. The people who are responding to these kind of appeals are the ones who are deeply engaged with your cause because you haven't asked them really to do anything. They just loved what they saw from you. On the other hand, some of the lowest cost per leads that we see are through programs where the responder receives something tangible in return for their engagement, for them connecting with you, responding to your appeal. Neither of these are wrong, but they are quite hard to compare. If you looked at the cost per lead of two appeals, it could feel quite different, but what they're achieving may well be aligned with their targets. I'm going to show you a couple of examples that really bring this to life and should make it make sense. And I'm going to start with the right-hand side, which is a DRTV appeal, a television appeal for the Royal British Legion. And it's much more on that tangible, incentivized end of the spectrum.
I'm leaving a legacy to the Royal British Legion because I've helped so many serving and ex-serving personnel like me.
When our service people return from duty, so many need support. Gifting your will to the Royal British Legion really could change lives.
The work the Royal British Legion do is amazing. They take into consideration the family, the children, and everybody is taken into account and supported.
Call now and you could benefit from our free will writing service.
I'll help make sure the Royal British Legion can be there in the years ahead.
And when you pledge, we'll send you your very own poppy brooch or cufflinks for you to wear with pride. Just call the Royal British Legion on 0800 144 5829 or go online. And remember all that our service people have done for us, with a gift in your will today.
So heavily focused on the organisation, the brilliant work that they do, and incentivization of your response and encouraging you to engage and start that relationship. This achieves one of the strongest cost per leads in the TV sector because of that balance. And then on the other side, I'm going to show you an appeal from breast cancer now. This one is much more about looking back on your life, your values and your identity. It's a much softer ask. Before I play it, I will give a content warning because it does have references to breast cancer in both the script and the visuals. Okay.
For your sister, who tells it like it is. For Mum, who's as daft as she is wonderful. For the friends who bring out the best in you. Well, usually. For the little one with the big personality. For the friends you grew up with. And the ones you get down with. For your neighbours who help you put the world to rights. And your niece who'll one day fix the world's wrongs. For your rock. Your helping hand. Your shoulder to cry on. And the ones you'd do anything to protect. For all the women in your life. And all the women yet to come. Leave a gift in your will to breast cancer now. You could keep protecting and caring for women after you're gone. With a gift that will help make sure no one goes through breast cancer alone. And no family loses someone they love. Please call 0800 144 5057 or go online to find out more. Because a gift in your will to breast cancer now is a gift for all women.
Okay, so a really powerful film that focuses much more on your life, your experiences, your values, who you are, who the people you care about are, and how that connects with Breast Cancer Now's cause. This is measured on cost per lead, but it's also measured on brand metrics. It's measured on website visits. The people who respond to this appeal, there's less of an incentive. They're going to be much more emotionally engaged, but the cost per lead is also going to be higher because there's less push for responses.
I'm Lee.
Oops. When you look at those two ads, it's really clear that it's challenging to compare like for like in the context of legacy propositions and campaigns. Firstly, because personal connection to the cause is, of course, the most significant factor here, but also there's such a variety of propositions and offers. No one is right or wrong, but if you compared the data of those two creatives and the results of those campaigns, they would be night and day in terms of results, but they're both meeting their individual objectives and targets, whether that's low cost per lead or whether that's deeply emotionally engaged leads at a smaller level and some brand engagement and metrics. Depending on where you want to sit on that spectrum, it has an impact on what your ask is, what your offer is, how you're benchmarking, and the potential audience that you're engaging with. So on that more lead generation, like the Royal British Legion style appeal, you might be offering a free will or another free service. You can measure this easily with cost per inquiry, cost per pledge. It's broad engagement, it's measurable, and it's efficient cost per leads. They may be slightly less engaged leads, but it just means that more focus needs to be put on that journey that you take them on. And they're also potentially a slightly younger audience. On the brand end of the spectrum, so like the Breast Cancer Now ad, you might have a search or a find out more call to action. You might measure based on cost per page visit or brand metrics. It's still a broad audience. You have the potential to shift brand metrics. You'll have highly engaged leads, but they could be a lower level and it could be quite challenging to measure and track those leads in an ad like that or a proposition like that. And then you have something in the middle where you might offer a guide and information about how to leave a gift in your will. You can measure it by cost per guide request. It is a smaller audience. You're not incentivizing response by a free will offer or a kind of scalable shared values message. It's higher quality leads, but on a smaller scale, but it is also measurable. So different appeals in the context of legacy and different propositions can behave so differently. And that's why it's so important to really understand what your objectives are, what your targets are, and that's what informs your creative approach and your proposition. This next section talks a little bit more about the process of developing a proposition once you've asked those questions. At DTV, we split proposition development into 3 key stages, all themed around the heart, very sweet. We have the insight, which we call the pulse, the proposition, which is the heartbeat, and something I'll talk a little bit more about is toolkits, which are the heart. It's basically your toolbox to ensure that you can actually use the proposition effectively and your teams use it as effectively as possible. In an ideal world, an overarching legacy proposition should thread through all of your legacy comms, from awareness to consideration and conversion, so inquiry and intention stage, all the way through to retention and ongoing pledger journeys, having that consistent message running through from where they initially engage with you and what inspired them to engage as the kind of story that runs through their entire relationship with you all the way through to pledging. But what do we mean by a legacy proposition? Well, it could be something like RNLI's Launch a Memory, so your name on a lifeboat, or it could be something more like UNICEF's We Are the Generation, much more about identity and values versus offering something like the Launch a Memory appeal. I'm going to show you the UNICEF ad. This is an ad we developed for UNICEF a number of years ago. Again, a much more values-driven approach, which is far more about identity, who your potential audience are, and how your organization overlaps with that.
We're the generation who had it all. We're the generation that had the music and the moves We're the generation that had the style. Well, sometimes. We're the generation that walked where no one had walked before. Like no one had walked before. And boy, did we know how to fly. We're the generation that found time for our children. We're the generation that had a dream and broke down walls. We came together to feed the world's children. We came together to protect them. And in this dangerous world, we have to carry on saving them, protecting them, caring for them, even when we're gone. If we remember UNICEF in our will, we'll remember the children who desperately need our help. And we'll be the generation who left a safer world for children.
So again, all about values, identity, encouraging people to find out more by visiting a website. A beautiful film, really lovely and iconic film. But the question is, how do you then capture data and leads from this? With an appeal like this, you might get loads of website visits, but do you actually get the data from the people, and can you actually take them onto your journey? Do you actually have tangible leads that you can attribute to this proposition and this campaign? One thing that UNICEF did as the follow-up, once people go online to find out more, is offer a free timeline of your life. So we'll take your life from your date of birth and put in all of the key historical moments that have happened in your lifetime that you can look back on. Really lovely. You get their email address, their name, but most importantly, you get their date of birth, which is just an invaluable suite of data when it comes to legacy giving, right? So you've got all of those pieces of data, and it was a great way of encouraging leads that you may not be able to actually capture to give you that information. So there are ways around it, but it really, again, it depends on what your objectives are, should inform the approach you take, because an appeal like this is beautiful. It does amazing work for brand metrics. It sows those seeds of consideration of a gifting will to you, but do you have the data to follow up with those relationships? So our three-stage process. The first stage in any proposition development process is, of course, insight. We start by building a deep understanding of your organization and your legacy offering as a product, but also who your potential audience is and where the overlap is between your audience and your cause in terms of values, identity, and also motivations. We might look at existing appeals and propositions that you've tested, any existing audience personas or profiles or research that's been done. We might do our own qual or quant online panel research. It could be focus groups, facilitated workshops with key stakeholders, looking at what competitors are doing. There's so many ways that we're trying to build that picture of who you are as an organization and where you fit and who that audience is. Really, what we're trying to do is understand these four key questions. The first one is, what are your legacy objectives? Is this about attitudinal change, a little bit like the UNICEF and the Breast Cancer Now ad? Or is this about behavioural change, much more like the Royal British Legion ad? Who's your audience? Are you trying to speak to baby boomers or perhaps Gen X? Or is this more about the post-war silent generation? Once you understand those two questions, and I think Marie's going to put a poll in the chat somewhere on these, it's much easier to then build a picture of what your proposition and what your creative offering is. Once you know what your objectives are and who your audience is, you can build a picture of what your hook or your offer might be. Is your offer shared values and symbolic immortality, or is it an incentive? Is it a free will writing offer? Is it free information? Is it even perhaps like keychain when people pledge? And what's your focus? Are you focusing on your cause and the amazing work you do and honoring that? Or are you focusing on the audience and who they are, their values, their identity, and how that can live on through a gift in their will to you? Bro, thanks, Marie. So yeah, have a think. Where do you feel that you sit in terms of your legacy targets at the moment? What would that look like for you? And as we go on in this session, we can have a little bit more of a breakout where we explore this in more detail as a group. Once we have an understanding of your legacy product and your audience, that's when we really move into proposition development. It's an iterative process. We develop a number of different potential propositions that are refined collaboratively with your team and key stakeholders to ensure that they really do encompass you and the work that you're doing. At DTV, as part of this process, we also test the propositions either through online research surveys, qual and quant combined online research surveys, or through live meta testing. Really, it's about understanding which proposition resonates for your audience, which meets those objectives for your legacy program, and how we can refine the proposition to ensure it's as engaging and as effective as possible. And then finally, we develop a toolkit. For me, this is my favorite part of the process. I think the beauty of a toolkit is it actually makes a piece of strategic or creative work functional and useful for a fundraising team. I can see in the poll, far more people are on the behavioral end of the spectrum than attitudinal. That's really interesting to see. That's useful. We want to ensure that any proposition we develop is meaningfully understood and a genuinely valuable tool that can be used by teams internally, but also if you work with agencies, they have a toolbook as to this is the proposition, this is how we communicate legacy, this is what we want to achieve, and this is who we are. The toolkits include guidance on what the proposition is, the strategy behind it, and your objectives and your targets and the rationale. It will include the research, learnings, and methodology of how you develop your proposition. The key messages that sit underneath the proposition, all framed around your targets and how you want to engage with your potential audience. And then also detailed guidance on flexing the proposition into different channels and different stages in the legacy journey, both in terms of messaging and visuals. If you are working on a legacy proposition internally, I would recommend considering working on a toolkit, whatever that might look like for your organization, whatever's useful within it. I think it's an invaluable thing to develop for yourselves to ensure that your team, wider stakeholders, agencies, partners really understand what your objectives are, how you want to speak about legacy, who you're trying to target, how, and what that looks like in context, and guidance on how they actually take action on that. This is an example we recently developed for Cats Protection. We developed their overarching fundraising proposition and a toolkit that came out of it that covered the proposition itself, the core messaging, the visual identity that sits under that proposition, but also how that proposition flexes for every single one of their fundraising products, whether that's regular giving, legacy, gaming products, membership products. It meant that people can take that proposition and meaningfully use it in the context of their day-to-day role and ensure it's not just something that's created and then forgotten about. It's been developed with your objectives in mind to help you reach your targets and communicate with your audiences in the right way. So ensure that you really are doing that. And then I'm going to show you Cats Protection's legacy advert as well.
They scamper and pamper and puzzle and nuzzle. They love and they shove and they fit like a glove. We all know that life is so much better with cats. But not every cat will have a life of love. Some will be abandoned. Some will be neglected. Some will be left all alone in the world. At Cats Protection, we're just like you. We stand up for cats and want a world where they get love and care. Now you can make sure they get that love and care for years to come with a gift of Cats Protection in your will. To find out more, send for your free information booklet. Just call 0800 153 3896 or search Cats Protection Gifts in Wills. Cats have made your life better. Now you can make many cats' lives better too with a gift in your will.
This ad, if we think of that spectrum from earlier, sits somewhere in the middle. You're offering information about how you can leave a gift in your will to this organization. In theory, that means highly engaged leads, but perhaps less scalable and at a smaller level. But in the context of an organization like Cats Protection, I think this is one of the benefits where, let's say there's, I think, about 10 million cat owners in the UK. There is such a potentially huge scalable audience for a cause like this. They can flex and explore lots of different messages that can work for them because they just have such a huge potential audience of people to engage.
They scam.
Okay, We're going to go into some breakout rooms and have the opportunity to think a little bit more about those questions that we talked about in the insight stage. So thinking a little bit more about what are your legacy objectives? It looked like the majority of people were on the behavioral end of the spectrum, and what that looks like, challenges with achieving that, and how you're approaching delivering on those more behavioral objectives. Who are your audience? When I saw the poll earlier, I'm not sure if it was completed, but it looked like it was quite a 50-50 split between baby boomers and Gen X versus post-war and silent generation. It'd be interesting to explore and understand why you're targeting those audiences, what that looks like, and how that impacts those objectives, or if it's the objectives that have led to that would be useful to understand. And then if you know the answer to those two top questions, it's a lot easier to start thinking about what your hook or offer could be. Perhaps if you're looking for post-war generation behavioral change, or post-war and baby boomers and behavioral change, it might be that you should be thinking about what incentivized offer you can look at. If you're looking at attitudinal change, perhaps you should be thinking about what values you can share as your hook or offer. What's your focus? Is it about the audience? Maybe if you're looking at attitudinal change, it's more about who your audience are. If it's behavioral change, perhaps more of a focus on the cause and what thematic areas you could look at. I'm going to stop sharing screen so I can also see you all before we go into those breakout rooms. Okay, so really our key takeaways from this session are the importance of understanding what your objectives are and what you want to achieve and what that looks like. Is this about bringing in a volume of leads and then nurturing them? Is it about bringing in a small number of leads that you know are deeply emotionally engaged with your cause? How is your success going to be measured? And that should really be what informs your proposition and creative approach when it comes to acquisition campaigns. How do your legacy objectives align with your organization's mission, vision, and voice, and with your audience? And what is it that you can offer donors? What are you offering people? Is it peace of mind? Is it shared values? Is it an incentive like a free will writing offer? Is it somewhere that's a kind of combination of two, where you're offering the peace of mind by giving them the opportunity to get their will sorted and in order? That was everything from us. Alex, I don't know if you have anything to add, but if not, we've got some time for any questions or any ponderings from the breakout sessions.
No, I don't think I've got anything to add. Thanks, Poppy. Yeah, it's great to hear any questions that anyone has.
Very much. It went well.
Did we want to get any feedback from the breakout rooms? Did anybody want to sort of chip in with what you were discussing? I'm putting everybody on the spot. Sorry. Go on, Oliver.
So I think I probably should be the one presenting from our room, considering I'm from Will Online. But it was a really nice discussion about the different stages that people are at in the journey, and the stuff that Poppy was talking about. Everything from people working on and getting ready to launch the legacy proposition, all the way through to talking about what should be measured by way of outcomes. And I think for different, I don't know if there's a trend with different sized charities. Question to you: the trend for different sized charities as to what the common measurables are, what the common outcomes that people should be measuring are, and whether you have a thought on what the best measurables are from a campaign. Because gifts in wills, it's a lifetime of communications for a single gift. I mean, pledges are great, but is that something to measure? Where would you go with this? What would your strategic steer be? People at different stages in their campaigns.
Yeah, it's a good question. Shall I go first? Probably you can jump in. The charities we work with, a lot of it depends on the size of their budgets for legacy as well. So like the much larger ones, I think, would probably run like multiple offers, and they will have a free wills guide, they will have a free will offer, they will have potentially other incentives as well, other kind of forms of lead generation that can kind of that can bring them legacy leads. But it's if they've got that budget to play with and they've got like large legacy teams, they're able to do that, and they're able to kind of then test and learn and work out what's best for them with their own particular kind of legacy conversion journey. For probably some of the smaller ones, I think that going with free will writing is like a proven way of getting kind of low cost leads and driving kind of much more measurable leads and potential income. So I think if you haven't got the budgets to do like a more big brand piece where you can kind of track legacy income over a much longer period, it tends to be that free will writing is used more often as that kind of lead. Then if you agree, Poppy.
Yeah, exactly. So free will writing, but measuring that cost per lead. And then I think also an important part of that conversation is measuring inquirer to intender rates and intender to pledger rates on that story, and understanding how effectively you are moving people further up that funnel towards becoming a pledger. Yes, like as Oliver said, we could measure based on pledges and potential return. But to know that we're doing a good job and to know that the proposition is working and we're taking people on the right journey, it's also really important to measure how well we're converting people up that funnel as well.
And one of the discussions we had in our breakout group was just about the different audiences also reflecting like what the organizational work is as well. Because I think it was Nicola that was mentioning that her organization that helps a lot of elderly people, and therefore a lot of the people that would be likely to support them with a legacy gift were likely to be the older generation. And so that's also kind of an important consideration in terms of like who your current like IG audience is, like who's on your database. You know, does your cause help people of a certain demographic, and like how far along are you with your legacy marketing as well? Because obviously the first thing you should do is be speaking to your existing supporters before you think about any acquisition or cold. You want to go to those warmest prospects first.
I guess it's also a conversation about forecasting it, and if you're being asked to forecast and estimate the potential return on legacy leads, this is a conversation about mortality, and the lead time of someone who's younger and the lead time of someone who's older will be different, and that also needs to play a part in the decision making of who you're targeting and how and why. It depends on, again, how you're being measured and what you're answering to in terms of that return as well.
I think there's a question in the chat from Tracy. How would you find out that movement from inquirer to pledger? It sort of really depends on your stewardship program and what the journey is. I mean, you can try and obviously uncover pledges. Some people don't want to tell you, and there will always be an amount of people that will give you a gift and they weren't pledges that you knew about. But obviously, if you can try and communicate with them, you know, for a lot of campaigns, people use telemarketing. They do like a legacy status check call, is very warm call, and they're just asking like, would you consider, have you pledged? Others, you can use it through, you know, direct mail or email. But I think you'll always have to accept there will be some people who won't tell you. And I think that rate does vary by organization. But yeah, I guess trying to measure it, just trying to get, and then you can kind of look at the number of people you've got kind of who've inquired, and then the percentage of those who then tell you that they've pledged, and that will give you that rate.
Can we have a show of hands? I'd be really interested to know who here measures legacy conversations and marks them up on their client relationship management system, be that Excel or Salesforce or whatever. That's about half. Yeah, it's just a wonderful, I think, a wonderful and cheap thing to be able to measure. If somebody is talking about gifts and wills, even if it's to say, oh, not for me at this stage of my life, that is interesting, and it can come in from anywhere in the organisation. So that kind of ties into the whole internal engagement, so that those conversations, be it in a clinical part or be it in a site or one of your visitor centres, make sure that they can filter back to you, and your colleagues need to know that. It's just incredibly important success signal, I think.
Definitely, and again, like budget dependent, but like the Royal British Legion, what they do is they have a series of kind of legacy events that they put on, and those events are great, and so you get a whole load of inquirers, intenders, pledges all come together. They'll have a talk from somebody that the Legion's helped. They quite often do them at like nice venues like the Tower of London, but I guess there's that social proof element that we had in the ad as well, where if you're talking to other people who pledged, it kind of makes it feel like a good thing to do, that other people like me are doing it. And those events are a great way of kind of uncovering those pledges as well.
Any other questions or comments from, sorry, Marie, so your
No, I was just going to say the same
fully.
thing. I was just going to say the same thing. Does anybody have any other questions? No. Well, I'd just like to say a huge thank you to Alex and Poppy. Oh, I think somebody's dropped out and come back in again. Trudy. Yeah, really great presentation. And what I was when I was looking at it, obviously these are the things that you do when you go into an organisation. But obviously that list, it can be done internally as well. You know, if people don't have the budgets to get you guys in to do that piece of work, they can look at that framework and say, okay, you know, what can we do ourselves to try and, you know, formulate a great proposition. So yeah, it was really useful. Thank you.
Bro, thank you all.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you so much for your time today, and thank you everybody for coming along. And it's great to see you.